The cell phone was shot by that long-distance psychopath. The second blade, Todd plans to make the car's gear into neutral, so that the car can be pushed back to a position that gets a signal. They set up a formation where Jody was on standby in the front position to record the source of the shots, while Karen was in the rear holding the fake scarecrow. Todd will try to open the car door and shift the gears into neutral. At that moment, the scarecrow was shot, then Todd got into the car while trying to attach the keys. But due to being shot continuously, he needed to hide first and didn't have time to change the gear to neutral. The good news is that Jody was able to track down the source of the shot, and it was discovered that the gunman was hiding in a tree. It was obvious that someone with a sniper was hiding in that tree. What this person means is also unclear. But what is clear, he's already in the tree, of course, for such a long time. Then, Todd, who's still not able to change the gear into neutral, tried to find protective equipment. Luckily, he saw his toolbox in the back of the car, and at that moment he was determined to take the box. Todd, who managed to get the toolbox, immediately made the iron cover as a hand protector. On the other hand, Eric could only surrender and did not know the plans of his friends. After that, Todd, who had put a shield on his hand, immediately ordered Karen and Jody to take positions. In such a short time, Todd immediately got into the car and managed to set the car's gear to neutral. Unfortunately, he had to be hit by a shot in the hand, and the car moved.
Smile and drive, take your mind.
Karen and Jody can't do much but still try as much as possible to hold the car. It was so difficult to hold the car, causing Jody's grip was released and made her bounce until she left the car. In the end, the tires of the car that had not been bolted on were directly shot and made the car stop. At that moment, Karen realized that this was the right time for Jody to run from there, because the shooter was reloading his bullets. At the same time, Eric tried to escape from his position, but he was shot before Jody. Well, as a result, Eric couldn't go anywhere else with the condition of his legs that had been shot on both of them. With such conditions, Eric should have been shot to death. However, the shooter deliberately let Eric suffer until he bleeds out. An hour later, Todd noticed a bottle of water still left in the car seat. Even though they are all thirsty, they try to share as much as possible in difficult situations like that. Eric, who was just about to take a sip of water, was shot in the hand and suffered even more. In fact, that long-distance psychopath is also human who feel thirsty or hungry. Because she couldn't go anywhere else, Jody, who was desperate to leave, had no other option but to be next to Karen. Then, Todd, who saw his girlfriend's body being eaten by a crow, couldn't accept it. He was determined to walk over to Sarah, who had died in the middle of the road. But surprisingly, the mysterious shooter didn't shoot Todd. In fact, Todd still had time to kiss his girlfriend and hold her hand. On the other hand, Eric, who was already dying, saw the wolf approaching him. If it's like this, Eric immediately surrenders because the wolf will devour him. Meanwhile, Todd, who challenged the shooter, accidentally saw a passing car from a distance. Of course, this is a rare occurrence with such a small chance. Unfortunately, Todd was shot at that point, causing the wolf not to eat Eric. Todd had no choice but to die right there in front of his girlfriend's body. At that moment, the car's driver saw Karen and Jody waving. However, the woman's hand was shot, and the bullet went straight through her ring finger. As a result, blood splattered all over the place. It became even worse when the steering wheel became uncontrollable. Then, the car crashed into Todd's car that was in front of him and caused Jeff's head to fall off his body. As a result, Karen and Jody's only hope vanished in an instant. The woman who was driving the car started to wake up. However, not long after that, she was hit by several shots from the shooter. Here we can also see the man who tries to save his throne daughter. Karen and Jody keep yelling to him to stay covered behind the car. At a moment like this, Karen told the father to call 911. Apparently, the position of the father was already in an area that received signal coverage. The shooter, who didn't know where the father was, started shooting at a car's tank until it blew up. In the end, the car exploded and there was no longer any protection for the father. You can see for yourself, slowly the father had to die with a burning body. Meanwhile, across the street, the daughter was still awake with full of wounds. The moment she just woke up, the long-distance psychopath shot the daughter's head until it burst. From these few minutes, instead of getting better, Karen and Jody had to watch death after death which got worse. They also confused about how to avoid that long-distance psychopath, even if the assistant's car cannot cross this way. Until finally, Karen ultimately comes up with a plan, and the two of them must act once night falls. Karen said that the shooter's sight would be more difficult when there was smoke at night. As night fell, the mysterious shooter continued to monitor the location and didn't miss a second. Then Karen, who was ready with a cutter, planned to tear some of the seats in the car. On the other hand, Jody took a bottle of gasoline, a bag containing clothes, and a drink box that she found in the back trunk. Luckily, there were still 2 drinks in the box and they drank it immediately. After that, Jody took t-shirt after t-shirt that was in the bag to be used as an emergency exit. Without a delay, Jody immediately poured a bottle of gasoline into the car seat, and Karen set fire to the newspaper outside. In the end, the car started to catch fire and release smoke. However, the smoke still wasn't enough to give them a chance to escape. From the appearance of the smoke, the long-distance psychopath started to get annoyed because his visibility was getting unclear. But suddenly, Karen saw a police car approaching the location. This indicates that the 911 call that the father called has been successfully connected and traced. In fact, the police also brought 2 snipers who were ready to spy on the shooter's presence. Then, the police who had just arrived realized that the situation at this location was not good. Therefore, he asked the state police for additional assistance. But again, the jaw of his mouth was hit by a shot from that mysterious person right down the neck. Unfortunately again, the policeman was lying in the position of driver's seat, and he accidentally stepped on the pedal of the car. From that opportunity, Karen immediately asked Jody to run, but Jody refused because she still didn't have the courage. Like it or not, Karen had to run alone, and unfortunately the smoke was starting to thin out. At that moment, she was shot and died on the spot. Now the police who had been 4 had now become 2 people. At that time, Jody was determined to run to the police car, which was not far away. At that moment, there was a shootout in which the mystery shooter was clearly better than the police. Then, Jody, who had no other choice, immediately took the police car. She planned to crash into the only tree that the shooter took as cover. Amazingly, Jody managed to do this and made the shooter fall from the tree. Jody immediately woke up and tried to pick up the fallen rifle. Meanwhile, the shooter kept trying to cut the rope that tied him to the tree. From here, you can see for yourself the figure of a mysterious shooter. This person really didn't have anything to do anymore, and was on a tree waiting for the victim. In fact, throughout the film we're not told who he is actually. The urgency of this situation made Jody scared and rushed. At that moment, she shot the man many times until he died on the spot. Still not satisfied, it took Jody 1 more shot to shoot the mysterious man in the head. However, while reloading the bullet, the cock of the gun suddenly stirred. Like it or not, Jody then hit the man with the tip of the gun, until his face was destroyed. Then, Jody saw some scratches on the rifle. You could say this line marks how many victims have been shot dead on this road. As a farewell, Jody wanted to hit the man on the head 1 more time, but unfortunately the gun popped and shot Jody in the neck. It's really irritating to see this. If I may give a suggestion, it's better if the scene is cut when the shooter is dead. Well, after all, if you're going somewhere, figure out which road you'll be crossing. Okay guys, that's all the recap for this movie. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I will recap one of a thriller film from 2014, titled Beyond the Reach. Before we get to the storyline, don't forget to like and subscribe for more film recaps. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The film begins by showing a man, Ben. Ben does not live alone in his minivan, but he is always accompanied by his girlfriend, Lena. Unfortunately, Lena can no longer accompany Ben because she must go to the city to complete her education. Therefore, Ben gave his girlfriend a weapon as a form of protection from the harsh realities of city life. Plus, he even told Lena that she should always prepare the weapon before going to bed and at bedtime. Long story short, Lena has gone to town, and Ben has to do all his activities alone. However, Ben is not completely unemployed because he works as a professional guide for hunters in this area. Moreover, one of his acquaintances services. The man's name was Medek, and he was prepared to pay Ben $1,000 a day. How could you resist? Ben himself admits that he has never been paid so much in one day. In addition, Medek has also prepared his own vehicle, which is a Mercedes-Benz G363 car, worth $500,000. He uses a Steyr Scout 308, which is not a weapon commonly used by hunters. Without further ado, Ben and Medek immediately went to the desert in the city. The location they came to was the best location for hunters, who usually spent their free time. Medek was actually looking for a desert sheep that couldn't be found anywhere else. When they arrived at the stopping point, they built a bonfire while chatting casually before starting the hunt that Medek had been waiting for. As the morning came, Medek, who was so excited, got up first to offer Ben a cup of coffee. Then, they immediately walked again to go to the rocky hill, which is usually inhabited by desert sheep. However, it was during the trip that Medek made Ben feel strange, in which he began firing his rifle at Ben. After seeing this, Ben assumed that Medek was an amateur hunter, who did not understand the rules of this place at all. And sure enough, when asked for a hunting license, Medek instead offered Ben a few dollars as a sign of silence. Which is where that much money does not include the daily payment that Medek had promised earlier. As a result, Ben cannot refuse the money, and he decides to accompany Medek as best as he can. So far, everything is fine, and there have been no significant problems for both sides. But that didn't last long. Medek continued to ignore Ben's cues and began shooting. In fact, Medek proudly thought he had just shot a desert sheep. But, as it turned out, what he shot was not a sheep but an old man, Charlie. To be more specific, Charlie is a local wanderer who goes out every day hunting for unusual stuff. Charlie is a close friend of Ben himself, which of course this incident immediately made him shocked. It was clear that Medek felt the same way as the person who took Charlie's life in an instant. From there, he could not do much other than waiting for Ben, who rushed to ask anyone for help. However, I'm not sure what Medek was thinking at the time, but he instead shot Charlie's body again using a rifle belonging to Ben. In the end, Ben, who had arrived without getting any help, was immediately told by Medek that this time there were two shooters who killed Charlie. That is the two of them. Well, Ben has been trapped indirectly by Medek, and involved if Charlie's body has been autopsied by the sheriffs. So, Ben was surprised after hearing the explanation, and he was immediately offered a win-win solution by Medek. Which in detail, Medek will send Ben to a university, and pay him a $300,000 per year living allowance until he graduates. To be honest, I think Ben will flatly refuse this offer. But he agreed to the agreement instead. And from there, Charlie's body was buried right away, and simply stacked with a number of rocks. Then Medek and Ben got ready to continue their hunting activities, and assumed that the incident had not really happened. However, as it turned out, Ben didn't really agree to their agreement, so he ended up trying to call an emergency call. But unfortunately, Medek found out about it, and the communication device was destroyed immediately. So, from now on, Ben must follow all orders made by Medek without question. Starting from taking off his shirt, pants, shoes, and all the equipment he was wearing, until he was forced to walk home without any food or drink. Logically, with the scorching heat of the sun directly on the skin in broad daylight like this, it was obvious that Ben wouldn't be able to last long, and had to die of dehydration. As a result, Medek immediately saw this and realized that he didn't need to kill Ben, which would only make him more guilty in the end. As time went on, Ben continued to follow the electricity pole that lined the area. Ben realized that this trip would end in vain. He didn't want to follow the electricity pole anymore. Then, he immediately changed direction at that moment. It is not known for sure where Ben wants to go, but what is clear is that he seems to understand what he must do in the next step. And it was true. Ben went to an excavation in the middle of the desert on purpose, and then walked right into one of the gaps covered by rocks. Apparently, this hole leads to the hideaway of Charlie, who had previously been the victim of a shot from Medek. In this space, Ben immediately took advantage of several items that he could use, and also a map that Charlie had drawn. But unfortunately, Ben's exact location were realized by Medek, who purposefully looked for a way through the hole, which led to one of the hidden cabins. Then, without any delay, Medek entered the cabin, and he began to hear noisy sound in the cabin. In other words, Ben's location was no longer safe. Moreover, Medek had deliberately thrown some dynamite in it. As a result, Ben had no choice but to leave the cabin. With great pleasure, Medek immediately greeted him at that very moment. This time, Ben is forced to stay on the home's path, and not to get out of Medek's sight. But still, Ben tried to avoid as much as possible, even though his physical condition was so badly injured. Ben even deliberately went back into one of the rocks, where he had used to chill with Charlie. By relying on the existing sofas, he immediately bandaged the soles of his feet, to prevent them from becoming worse and peeling off. After his legs were bandaged, he continued to run so he could avoid being chased by Medek. Ben quickly began to follow the directions from the map drawn by Charlie. And luckily, Ben's efforts were not in vain, because all this time Charlie had deliberately kept a catapult, several marbles, and a map that led to the dig point of one jerrycan of water. But, just as Ben was about to drink a little, the jerrycan was deliberately shot by Medek. Well, this time Ben can only surrender while being watched by Medek, who is actually enjoying the suffering of others. With such pressure, it was clear that Ben could no longer continue his journey, and he had simply collapsed. To make sure that Ben is really dead or not, Medek purposely fires several bullets at Ben at that very moment. In fact, he didn't wake up at all, and Medek immediately left the location. But it turned out that the situation was just a trick, because Medek still saw Ben walking around. From there, Medek began to get angry with Ben's trick, which he no longer wanted to let Ben escape alive. However, it is not easy to do, because Ben himself already knows every ins and outs of this area. Well, you can see for yourself that Ben went back into a hole, and purposefully waited until night fell. Without feeling tired at all, Medek was still waiting for Ben, who was hiding in the rocks. He also kept calling Ben and hoping that Ben would surrender. But as it turned out, Ben wasn't that stupid, because he had managed to get out of the other gap without being noticed by Medek. Furthermore, Ben dared to get close to Medek's car, then he took the time to put on a jacket. At that point, Medek, who had just finished peeing, immediately realized that something odd had happened to his car. Starting from the passenger door that is not closed tightly, until the jacket that is no longer there. As a result, Medek relied on his instincts at the time, and it is true that Ben was immediately shocked when the car actually reversed suddenly. If been caught like this, there's no other way that can be done by Ben, other than hiding in the rocks. He also had to try to avoid the dynamite explosion that Medek threw at him repeatedly. Luckily, with his reflexes, Ben was able to get through it all, and he even managed to knock out Medek with just one slingshot. In the morning, it was seen that Medek had been successfully tied by Ben in the car. Ben didn't waste any time and went straight to the sheriff's office to report Medek for his irresponsible behavior. It didn't stop there. Ben also revealed that Medek had offered him some money after he had just shot Charlie to death. The evidence managed to make Medek go to jail soon, while Ben could be free to do his normal activities. Unfortunately, Medek, who initially says that he needed to go to the toilet for a while, turned out to have called someone to pick him up by helicopter. He had made the call as soon as he arrived at the office, and no one noticed it. That's where, in secret, he is already ordering his men with a smartwatch. A few days after the incident, Ben purposely followed his girlfriend, who was already living downtown. He also no longer wants to work as a guider, due to the trauma of a previous incident. Unexpectedly, Ben dreamed that Medek would follow him to the house. But it turned out that he had really arrived without them both knowing. Fortunately, Medek's plan failed, because Lena was already standby with a gun that she always carried when she slept. From there, Medek couldn't do anything, which is where he died after being shot 3 times by Ben. And the film ends. To be honest, this film was able to make me feel tense without a lot of actors in each scene, which for some reason, the environment that was created made us feel like we were in Ben's position. Okay guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks Thanks for watching. See you. Hello everyone. Back again with Film Recap. In this video, I will recap one of a horror thriller films from 2018, titled Head Count. Before we get to the storyline, don't forget to like and subscribe for more film recaps and have a great day.
Rally. Switch page.
The film begins by showing a guy named Evan. He had just sent his friends to go on vacation. From here, we can assume that he was unhappy by his expression. He couldn't go on vacation with his friends since he had to meet his brother. In fact, he had lived in a different city apart from his brother, Peyton, for a few years. Of course, Evan had no pleasure on his vacation since his brother preferred living in nature. Peyton, on the other hand, is a person who rarely uses his cell phone and never uses it to communicate. Moreover, one of the women from the group seemed to have a crush on Evan, which she had just photographed. The blonde woman then invited Evan and his brother to join them. At first, Peyton wasn't interested in joining, but unlike Evan, he likes to socializing with others. Then, it turns out that Evan also has a crush on a woman in the room, Zoe. From there, they began to introduce themselves, in which a woman in black named Tori, the woman in pink named Haley, a blonde woman, Camille, and Vanessa, a woman with glasses. Meanwhile, the guys included Sam with a black hat, a man in a black shirt with Max, Brian in a blue jacket, and a man in multicolored clothes, Nico. After Evan and Zoe's long conversation, the group of friends planned to return to the villa, which is located far from their place. Zoe and Camille then invites Evan and Peyton to spend time and stay at their villa. Actually, Evan wanted to join the group, but he felt bad for his brother. As a result, the group had to leave Evan and Peyton who headed another direction. However, not long after, Peyton soon realized that Evan was in a dilemma as a result of the situation. Evan clearly didn't want to waste this opportunity, and he preferred someone else over his brother. Long story short, the group of friends then had arrived at the villa. At first, there was nothing suspicious at all and everything went well. Until one moment, they all took turns to read horror stories, in which the stories had to be taken from the website. This is where the trouble starts when Evan reads a story called History, which doesn't sound like a story at all. After that, they all immediately stopped the activity and went back to the villa to have a party. Meanwhile, Zoe and Evan were alone together in warm water. On this occasion, Zoe shared that all of her 8 friends in the group were a couple, except her who was still single. Therefore, Zoe felt lucky with the arrival of Evan, who seemed excited to accompany her. As time passes, the scene shows Evan who just woke up from his sleep. Evan, who was satisfied with last night's party, immediately came out of the room, while greeting the blonde woman who was sitting in the living room. Not long after, Evan, who was wearing a short jacket, a quick took moving to a warehouse. Inside the warehouse, he saw a mysterious image which seemed to be 5 people holding hands, which is not known what it meant. Then, he was approached by Zoe, who planned to spend time with him again tonight. Camille, on the other hand, had just woken up from her sleep and was rushing, since her friends were already prepared to go around. A few minutes after that, Camille then asked everyone to hurry up, especially Brian, who was still busy with his kitchen stuff. But as it turned out, Camille had no idea that Brian she was waiting for was already in the car. Of course, this strange incident made her so confused. Moreover, Evan also told them all to wait for a blonde woman, which he previously spotted in the living room. He then was told by all of them that there were no more blonde women, except Camille. After a long journey in the car, they all finally arrived at the rocky hill. They then began to separate, in which Evan and Zoe walking together with Nico, Haley, and Sam. In this scene, we can see that Tori had just time to catch up with them. But unexpectedly, Zoe simply jumped off a cliff and made her friends panic and instantly fell. Luckily, Zoe didn't die but only suffered a leg injury. Strange things kept happening when Tori, who had just been spotted standing on the cliffs above, suddenly appeared beside Zoe. Zoe also didn't even realize that she was about to fall free. She admitted that she didn't remember the incident until her legs was injured after hitting the ground. Later that night, they were gathered at the villa wondering about the previous incident. Plus, strange things keep happening that night. While Camille was on her way to grab a drink, she noticed Nico in the kitchen. However, when she returned to the living room, she was confused to see Nico in the living room talking with her friends. Despite the fact that they've had a number of strange things happen to them recently, but they're still certain it's all due to the effects of alcohol. But unlike Evan, he was so scared that it made Max intend to lock every door. Unfortunately, they were again surprised by the arrival of an unknown person. But as it turned out, the figure is Peyton, who had been waiting for his brother's return. Even so, all immediately became suspicious of Peyton, since he had never been to this villa but could know its location. However, their accusations were not true, because his brother had tracked Evan's location by relying on tools that work with GPS. At this moment, Evan had actually been invited home by his brother, but he still wanted to be there to accompany Zoe. As a result, Peyton had to go back from the villa without his brother who he had been worried about. Not long after Evan's brother left, they gathered to play guessing games. But when it was Sam's turn to answer, the electricity in the villa went out, and Sam strangely appeared from the kitchen. At this point, they all got goosebumps in an instant, since this proved that the figure who had previously played with them was not the real Sam. To make everyone feel safe, Evan, Max, and Sam walked throughout every room to turn on the lights that went out suddenly. The following day, Evan then woke up from his sleep, leaving Zoe alone in the room. This time he deliberately took to find out some facts about the story he had previously read. Evan then discovered which in the previous night, he was not reading a horror story, but rather a spell that could summon a creature named History. According to this source, History is believed to be a creature who can change his form into anything. The energy becomes even stronger when there are 5 individuals in a group, or when the number is doubled. After reading all the information, Evan planned to tell his friends that he no longer wanted to be there. However, he was surprised by the presence of Zoe, who encouraged Evan to stay there. Moreover, Zoe also said that her leg was getting better, and Camille asked her to come along in Max's car. As a result, Evan got ready right away, and he joined Camille and Nico on the trip. When they arrived at the location, they all immediately got out of the car. However, Evan didn't see the appearance of Zoe, who said she would come along with Max's car. Plus, he was told that Zoe's condition was getting worse, requiring Brian and the others to look after her in the villa. Evan couldn't stop thinking after he heard that, and he soon realized there were 5 persons in the villa right now.
How many of them are there back at the house?
5?
As a result, he was panicked at the time and decided to return to the villa with Camille. Unfortunately, because they had traveled such a long distance from the resort, the two of them were only able to get at the villa at night.
बिस्कुट नहीं है,
पैसे दे दो ना।
पैसे भी नहीं है।
दे दो ना। पाँच पाँच दे दो। ले हम ले अंदर खाएंगे। अंकल
एक सेकंड एक सेकंड एक सेकंड।
अंकल अंकल
एक सेकंड रुक जाओ रुक जाओ। अरे यार,
अंकल दे दो ना। मुझे दे दो।
अरे रुक जा रुक जा रुक जा रुक जा।
अंकल अंकल
अरे नहीं 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 पहले पहले गाड़ी आगे आगे बढ़ा, आगे 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 आगे। अरे अरे गाड़ी से आगे हटो हटो।
दे दो ना।
Take the 10.